If you have ever worked with indirect lighting in Blender Eevee, you must have noticed that you cannot animate its properties, and you cannot change the position of the indirect lighting. It works in cycles, but not in Eevee. However, there is still a way to do that, using Python scripts. In this quick tutorial, we'll see how to use a Python script in Blender in order to animate indirect lighting in Eevee. This scene itself is created with indirect lighting in Blender Eevee engine. So let us start with a scene like this, which is very simple. Here we have one icosphere and a UV sphere. We'll use this as the source of an indirect lighting. Let us go to the rendered view mode. We purposefully kept the ambient light very faint, because we'll add an emission material for this sphere. So select this sphere, go to the Materials tab and create a new material. We have to change this surface to an emission. And if you want, you can also change the color of the emission, maybe red. Let us then change the emission strength to say 30. Now since we are in Eevee, we can also add a glow effect by enabling this bloom option, but we need to reduce its intensity a little bit. You may not see any effect of this on any other object in this scene, because mesh lights are treated as indirect lights in Blender, so we need to bake this light with the help of an irradiance volume before we can see its effect. So go to the Add menu, and under Light Probe, add this irradiance volume. We need to resize it appropriately, so that this volume or the box covers all necessary objects in the scene, the indirect light source itself, as well as other objects. If you are not very familiar with irradiance volume, you can check our foundation level tutorial on indirect lighting. The link is given in the video description. Now, before we bake the indirect light or this irradiance volume, let us add a simple animation to our light source. We'll move it along this line. Right now we are at frame 1. So let us keyframe its current X location. Then we'll go to frame number 100. And we'll move it to the other end like this. Let us directly enter a value, -3.5. We need to keyframe this. Then we'll go to the end of the animation, and we'll bring it back to the original location, which was 3.5. And we need a keyframe on this as well. Now we'll bake the indirect light through this irradiance volume. So go to the Render Properties tab, and scroll down all the way below to this indirect lighting section, and start the baking process. You can see the progress here. Internally, what Blender does is, it takes the current position of the indirect light source, and calculates the lighting and the shadow information for all the frames, based on this one single frame, so it is a static data. Our baking is complete, so let's go to the first frame, and start the animation. You'll see that the light source is moving, but the light information is not changing throughout the scene, because Blender is using a static light data. We need to manually update this light data for each frame, and then render only that particular frame to get a frame-by-frame animated light property, which is humanly almost impossible to do. So we'll use an automated process, which is the Python script. Let us open a text editor. Then click on New. This is the place where we can write a Python script for execution, and we'll paste a code here, like this. We have given this entire code in the video description. You can simply copy-paste the code into your project, but you have to make 2 changes to this. You have to change this path. This is where Blender will save the output image sequence, and you have to also change these start frame and end frame numbers, based on which frame range in your project has indirect lighting. We can execute this script by clicking on this button, but before that, go to this window menu and select Toggle System Console. It will open up this external console window. We'll see later why it is needed. Let us go back to the text editor. We'll start the code execution. What this script does is, it takes this frame range, and then it loops through each frame in that range. Then it calculates the real-time light information for each frame, and renders the correct output for that frame. That rendered output is then saved in this location as an image sequence, so there will be one image output for each frame, with the frame number appended at the end of this. One drawback of this is, it does not come with a fancy screen to show you the progress bar. It just does its work silently in the background. But if you go to this output folder, you'll see that these image sequence files are getting generated, and even new files will keep on appearing here, so you know that something is happening. But here, if you try to do anything in this main Blender window, you'll see that it's not responding. But don't worry, in case you want to stop the script execution, you have to go to this console window. Here, press Ctrl+C on your keyboard. It will stop the script execution after the current frame is processed. Now back to the text editor, let us complete the script execution. Once it is processed, you'll get this kind of image sequence files, which you can then join together as a video, using any video editing software, or you can even use Blender's own editor, which is called Video Sequence Editor. And you'll get an output like this. So now you know how to animate indirect lighting in Blender. And you can also animate any light property, like the intensity or the color of the light. It will work with anything related to the light, so Eevee will be even more powerful. I hope you like this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.